Oh my God, she's chained to that tree. That was all Owen Hart could utter as he stepped through the dense forest canopy and saw her. A young woman, barefoot, her body marked by bruises, her wrists locked in iron chains around the trunk of an ancient tree. She neither screamed nor cried because she had lost all hope. Owen had merely planned a weekend camping trip with his daughter to find some peace after their losses. He wasn't looking for anyone, yet he found her. And when he knelt to unlock those chains, he had no idea he was opening the door to a dark tale of power, suffering, and an unexpected love. All right, my dear viewers, get ready for a story that will leave you speechless. Take a second to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see people joining us from all around the world. The morning in Umpqua National Forest was like a painting drawn in silence. Sunlight sparkled through the lofty canopy, casting a gentle golden wash over the dew-soaked undergrowth. A soft breeze rippled through the straight trunks of the pines, producing a hushed rustle like the ancient whisper of nature itself. Owen Hart stood there, his hand gripping a tent stake, eyes tracking his little daughter's delighted laughter as a startled squirrel leapt across the brush. In that moment, everything else seemed to fade. The 1,000-page construction contracts, the soulless investment pitches, and even the unspoken emptiness left by his wife's death, all blurred into insignificance against the simple sound of a child truly living. He had brought June here hoping she could laugh more, and that he could learn to breathe again. No car horns, no phone rings, only the forest's hush and the crisp crack of broken branches underfoot. Bending down to fasten a loose tent hook, Owen caught a very different sound on his hearing, so faint it could have been missed, but strange enough to make his spine straighten. It wasn't a bird call. It wasn't the wind. It was a groan, hoarse, feeble, as if escaping from a swollen throat bereft of breath. He looked up, eyes sweeping the surroundings, heart skipping a beat. June had disappeared behind a thicket to his right. "June?" he called softly, voice blending with the breeze. No answer. Then came another whisper, this time clearer, a sound choked between pain and despair. Without hesitation, Owen grabbed the flashlight clipped to his backpack and plunged into the woods. Each step pressed the rotting leaves underfoot, but he barely noticed. Dry branches scratched his jacket. Brambles tore at his pant legs, but he did not pause. This feeling was too familiar, like the last time he'd failed to reach his wife's hospital bedside. The canopy above closed in, light dimming with every meter. And then, in a shadowed clearing among ancient oaks, he saw her. A young woman lay propped against a massive wooden stake, her black hair plastered to both cheeks. Her clothes so crumpled, it was hard to believe they'd once been a restaurant uniform. A mud and dried, blood-stained apron clung to her waist. Her wrists were lashed backward in rusted iron chains coiled tightly around the stake, not merely to confine but to torment. Her wrists were swollen, her ankles bruised, her lips cracked and parched, her skin ashen. But it was her eyes that froze Owen in place, eyes wide open, staring at him as if unable to believe he was real, as though she had seen someone approach and be betrayed by their departure. No words were spoken, no names were called. Only one truth stood out more vividly than anything, a fear that had never abated. In that instant, Owen knelt slowly, as though afraid to break anything more of the person before him. He didn't know who she was, where she'd come from, or why she'd been chained in the forest like an animal. But he knew one thing with certainty. No one deserved such suffering. The wind hissed through the branches. A crow flapped above. The scent of old blood mingled with the forest's damp decay. The girl could not speak, but her eyes were screaming something urgent. And Owen Hart, who had built hundreds of skyscrapers, now faced something he'd never encountered before. A person utterly shattered, and a question echoing in his heart. Who could chain a woman like this and abandon her in a wilderness where no one would ever find her?
Welcome to 30 Millionaire Stories, where success meets solitude, and every story heals a hidden wound. Subscribe and discover the heart behind the fortune.
She awoke in the muted light of an unfamiliar room, the scent of pine and fresh linen mingling like a fading dream. Morning sunbeams filtered through the curtains, dancing upon the warm wooden ceiling. Yet in Lani Chavez's chest, no light could penetrate. Every tiny movement, from her heartbeat to the blink of an eye, carried the memory of cold chains, of rough bark scraping her back, and of insects buzzing around her swollen wrists. She had not died, but that did not mean she was truly alive. Lainey, 24, had once brimmed with hope. Born in a small Arizona town, she left home at 18 with 2 duffel bags and a simple dream: enough money to study interior design and never to depend on anyone. She found work as a waitress at an upscale resort in Napa Valley, a place of crystal chandeliers, handcrafted wines, wealthy guests in wide-brimmed hats, and voices as smooth as honeyed butter. One such guest was Vincent Morano. He was unlike other men, quiet, unassuming. He always sat at the outdoor patio, ordered the same cocktail, and turned the pages of dog-eared books with thoughtful intent. He began with casual questions, then gradually reshaped her world with polite gazes and promises that seemed never to end. "You deserve more than this," he once said. "I could help you reach farther." And she believed him. Vincent ushered her into a new realm: exclusive parties, lavish hotel suites where she was no longer a server, but a guest. A small apartment furnished in borrowed walnut wood so she could have a creative space. A personal stylist to ensure she dressed to her potential. Each gift came tethered with a leash: first gentle advice, then clear restrictions. She began losing her right to choose. Friends stopped visiting. Her phone was replaced with a more private one. Emails were blocked. Invitations to leave the city were rebuffed through cold calls from his lawyer. Then one day she awoke to find she was no longer Lainey Chavez, but an exhibit in Vincent's private collection. The first time she tried to escape, he did not rage. He only smiled and returned her, issuing a soft warning as gentle as the breeze: "You need not run, but if you ever do again, you will wish you hadn't." Lainey endured 6 more months of that false tranquility, where everything was controlled and every choice was an illusion. But fear did not kill her. Instead, it kindled a quiet flame within her. Then one spring morning, while Vincent was away on business, she took every dollar she had, left everything behind, and ran. She fled as far as she could, changed her name, altered her hairstyle, and survived on odd jobs, each step taken with utmost caution. But Vincent did not need to chase her. He had trackers. He had a network. He had money. One afternoon, thinking she had finally found safety, his hand reached into the darkness. Men arrived silently, unarmed, without a sound, and the last thing she remembered before the light vanished from her eyes was the jangle of cold chains. Now seated on the upholstered chair in Owen's home, where the smell of fresh bread and children's laughter stood in stark contrast to the world she'd fled, Lainey did not know how to name what she'd lost. Freedom? That was easy. But trust? The belief that she did not deserve to be hunted, that she was not someone's possession, that was far harder to reclaim. She glanced down at her wrist, the red bruised mark still etched like an indelible sign. And she wondered, if Owen had not appeared at that precise moment, who would have been the last person to see her alive? The small wooden house nestled among the ancient pines on Vashon Island, separated from the city by a ferry ride and a winding dirt road. No car horns, no billboards, only the sound of the sea breeze and the natural rhythm of the forest. To many, this place might feel isolating. To Owen, it was sanctuary. And now it had become a refuge for her too. Lainey, the girl he still didn't know what to call, except by a name so small, so fragile. She spoke little, shared nothing. She entered his home like a cool breath, present yet never demanding. On that first night, she slept in the armchair by the window, back to the room, eyes fixed on the darkness outside. Even though Owen had shown her the neatly made bed, a private bathroom, and a wardrobe with a few prepared outfits, she kept her shoes on all night. Perhaps for her, preparedness was dangerous. Comfort was a trap. She ate sparingly. She was almost silent. Every creak of a door made her flinch. Every time June laughed, she stiffened, as though that sudden joy might shatter at any moment. Owen never asked. He offered no invitations, made no intrusions. Each morning he left a cup of hot coffee on the kitchen table, sometimes with a small note. "The garden is sunny today," or "June painted a picture. She says it looks like you." He let his words flow like water, no push, no pressure, and waited until she felt safe enough to step forward. Lainey began to emerge from her own shadow, not with a story, but through small acts. One morning, she washed the pile of dishes June had left behind. No one asked her to, and no one thanked her. But the neatly folded towel by the sink was thanks enough. A few days later, she watered the plants. Then she helped pick vegetables. And then, one afternoon, she showed June how to fold napkins into swans. The little girl looked at her with clear, wonder-filled eyes, as if Lainey were a character from a fairy tale. Affection does not spring from pity, but from companionship, from sharing silence without finding it uncomfortable. And amid gentle dawns, the scent of toast, clucking hens in the backyard, and bright laughter, Lainey once again lived to the rhythm of something resembling family. She no longer slept by the window, but her shoes still lay beside the bed. And June, the child with a heart wider than the sea, was the first to break down the wall of fear. Once, as Lainey was wiping a table, June quietly placed a small stone in her hand. "I kept it because it's shaped like a heart," the girl said. "Now I give it to you because I think you need a heart more." Lainey didn't know what to say, but that night she slept more peacefully. Owen still didn't ask. He simply repaired the back door hinge so it wouldn't creak. And he added an extra mug on the kitchen shelf. No label for whose it was. But the next morning that mug held warm coffee, and Lainey sat beside it, clasping it as though holding a part of herself she thought had died. Something very small, very slow, yet very real was blooming among the three living in that house. Something that needed no name but was felt clearly, like spring seeping into roots before a bud appears. Then one morning, as Lainey folded a blanket, the front door shuddered beneath the weight of a delivered package. No sender's name, no message, just a long box, and when she opened it, her hand froze. Inside was a brand new apron, the same style only Murano Hotel staff wore. Same cut, same color, but this time neatly folded, perfectly creased. A reminder that needed no words. And the fear, thought banished, tapped her shoulder again, like wind through a crack in the door. Was this mere coincidence, or was someone still watching her every move? Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or grab a drink, then stay tuned for the surprising next chapter. Comment 1 if you're enjoying the story so far, and let us know you're still here. That morning began like any other. Dew still clung to the wooden railing. A rooster's off-key crow echoed from the backyard, and June was busy scribbling bright colors across the whiteboard. Outside, Owen crossed the yard to check the package drop at the trailhead gate, marked by a low wooden fence that separated the world he controlled from the rest. He expected nothing. On Vashon, mail ran late, and most of it was farm equipment, or with ads or thank you notes from the community council. But today, there was something different. A neat, square parcel wrapped in brown craft paper, bound with coarse twine. No return address, no postage stamp, just the name Lainey scrawled in slanted handwriting, the ink blurred as if penned by a trembling hand. Owen held it, a nameless weight settling in his chest. He did not open it immediately, not in front of June. He set the package on the kitchen table, where the morning light slanted in, then stepped outside and called softly to Laney, who was watering the tomato vines along the fence. She entered the kitchen, saw the parcel, and stiffened at the first glance. Her normally careful hands now trembled. Owen gave a slight nod, as if to say, "I know." Then he stepped back, giving her space. When Laney untied the twine and unfolded the paper, a pristine white fabric apron emerged, folded so precisely it felt chilling. She recognized the weave and the stitching all too well. It wasn't just any server's apron. It was the uniform she had worn for nearly 2 years, through private parties, in locked hotel suites, on nights when her identity was erased and replaced by someone else's script. Beneath the fabric lay a small note bearing a single line: "Role-playing can be fun, but you know who's really directing the stage. Time to return." The words carried no overt threat, but the silence around them was violence itself. Laney stepped back. Her arm fell slack, and for a moment the world tilted. No scent of warm coffee, no sound of June's laughter, only the memory of doors slamming, watching eyes, and a man's hand sliding across her shoulder as though she were invisible. She sank to the kitchen floor, not crying but utterly spent. Her shoes remained neatly placed in the corner, a reminder that safety is always provisional. Owen moved silently to her side. He knelt, wrapping his arms around her trembling shoulders. No words of comfort, no questions, just presence, an anchor in the storm. And in that embrace, Laney wept. Not from fear, but because, for the first time, she did not have to endure alone. Each tear that traced her cheek felt like a cleansing of the scabbed over wounds within. She did not know how long she cried, only that when Owen's grip tightened, her shaking ceased. And she realized this man had not come to control her, nor to rescue her. He had come to stay. That day, Owen called Evelyn Cartwright, his late wife's former attorney, known for helping women escape invisible cages the law had yet to name. He said little but enough for Evelyn to understand. She needs legal protection, not pity. As for Laney, that night she sat by the old window, eyes on the darkened garden, the crumpled note clutched in her hand. She whispered to herself, "If he could find me here, there's nowhere left far enough to run." And perhaps it was time she stopped fleeing and began to fight back. That afternoon, the air on the farm felt heavier than usual. It wasn't raining, yet slate-gray clouds pressed low over the treetops, as if the sky itself held its breath in anticipation. Laney stood before the bedroom mirror, straightening the collar of her shirt, behind which a tiny hidden camera lay concealed beneath the fabric. She wore no makeup. There was no need. Fatigue had etched itself into her features like a carved line, and in her eyes burned a merciless clarity she never knew she possessed. Evelyn, her hair shot through with gray, a voice sharp as steel, and a memory like a recording device, stood in the hallway and gave a slight nod. No words of encouragement, no empty promises. Laney had heard too many of those, from men like Vincent. She didn't need rescuing. She only needed to know that this time, she was not alone. The plan was meticulous. An investigative team from an independent news channel waited hidden in the old barn beyond the orchard, accompanied by audio technicians. Evelyn had placed hidden cameras behind the bookshelf and wired microphones around the yard. Federal agents, after weeks of covert investigation, were parked in a sand-colored pickup truck just beyond the farm gate. All they awaited was Laney's signal, and she needed only to do the hardest thing: step out of the victim's role. When Vincent Morano arrived, he carried his usual air of sophistication: navy blazer, silver watch shining in the light, his smile as if this were merely a social call. His gaze settled on Laney as though she were a long-lost possession he'd finally recovered. He asked no questions about why she was here and offered no reaction to the letter he'd sent. To Vincent, this game remained firmly under his control. But Laney was different. She opened the patio door, stepped out, stood tall, her eyes unwavering. She no longer shied from his stare. She did not tremble, shrink back, or plead. In that silence, she reclaimed a part of herself she thought lost forever. Vincent tilted his head as though assessing which move came next. He offered a thin smile, his voice still honeyed. I've kept scores of girls like you silent. You think you're special? I own people like you. And then, time seemed to slow. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the back door swung open. A team in dark jackets emerged, cameras and microphones in hand. At the gate, engines roared as unmarked police vehicles rolled in. Vincent turned too late, missing the single beat that arrogance always costs a man like him. An agent stepped forward and read him his rights. Handcuffs snapped around Vincent's wrists. Those same hands that once touched Lainey as if she were a phantom, now bound by justice. Lainey said nothing. She merely watched and breathed evenly. Within hours, the recorded footage and his confession aired exclusively on a major network. From California to Oregon, from Washington, D.C. to New York, Vincent Morano's name was no longer linked to luxury hotels, but to charges of human trafficking, psychological abuse, and forced labor under the guise of power. Dozens of other women began to speak out. Faces once silenced now appeared on screens, voices trembling, yet eyes resolute. They named Lainey as the first. That night, as the television went dark, Lainey sat on the porch, cradling a mug of hot tea, her back against the wooden frame. She neither smiled nor cried. She simply lived in that moment, where for the first time in years, no haunting footsteps chased her in her mind. Yet deep inside, she knew this was only part of the battle. Forgiving herself would be the hardest step of all. Would she find the courage to love again, after everything? Spring returned to Umpqua National Forest with a gentle contrition. Branches once bare now wore fresh green buds. The scent of damp grass and pine resin filled the air. Birds sang more richly, as if recounting secrets kept through winter's hush. On a small moss-covered clearing beside an ancient tree etched with faded carvings, Lainey stood barefoot, hair loose, holding a length of rusted chain coiled into a small loop. The metal that once symbolized her terror now rested in her hand as a relic, no longer haunting but full of meaning. This very spot had marked the boundary between life and an end. She remembered the sting of cold steel against her skin, her heartbeat driven not by hope, but by fear of what might come next. Now, standing there, she did not weep. She did not crumble. She simply felt the earth beneath her feet, as if for the first time her body belonged to a place without violence or dread. From a distance came the familiar steady footsteps. Owen approached without breaking the silence. He asked no questions about why she'd returned here. He had learned Lainey's unspoken language, where silence can speak volumes. She turned, held out her hand, and offered him the chain. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she gently wound it around his wrist, loop by loop, not to bind, but to share. I keep it, she whispered, voice soft as wind through the treetops. Not to remember the pain, but to never forget the moment I chose to stand up. In the woods that once bore witness to her collapse, Lainey now stood more upright than ever. No props, no dramatic score or camera lights, just two people, a forest, and enough time passed to heal unseen wounds. She looked Owen in the eyes. He who never promised her anything, never tried to change her, yet was always there. The man who silently brewed her morning coffee, quietly made space at the table, and patiently sat beside her, sometimes just to watch her walk by without a word. You didn't save me, she said, her gaze steady. I saved myself, but you were the first to dare stay. So today I choose you, not because I need, but because I want to. There was no wedding gown, no chapel, no proclamations of belonging. Only a breeze brushing their shoulders, June's laughter echoing as she played tag with the farm's dog, and two hands clasped in the full consent. Owen smiled, not hurriedly, not with overwhelming emotion, just a quiet smile of someone who'd once lost everything and learned to cherish the small but sufficient gifts. As dusk fell, the three of them sat together on the grass. June leaned against Lainey's shoulder, drawing with a stick in the earth. 3 simple circles, their hands touching. The little girl called it the circle family, where nobody's left behind. That day, they made no promises, signed no papers, exchanged no rings, but in every look, in every small gesture, lay the understanding that love is not a spectacle. It is staying long enough for another to believe they are worthy. Vincent Morano was later convicted on multiple charges. The women, once silenced by power and fear, began to speak out, stronger, braver, thanks to the first woman who refused to remain silent. Lainey, once a victim, now leads a nonprofit that helps service industry women recognize and break free from subtle chains of abuse. She doesn't present her story as tragedy, but as living proof that the path back is hard, but possible. Owen no longer builds skyscrapers. He designs sanctuaries, small, warm, well-lit, where women can slip off their shoes, sleep deeply, and begin anew. And if anyone asks what freedom means to them, they need not say a word. They simply look at one another and smile, because sometimes the most beautiful ending isn't a wedding. It's finding someone brave enough to choose you when they no longer have to choose anyone to survive. Some pains leave no scars on the skin, but lie deep within shattered trust. Yet, as Lainey demonstrated, rising up, daring to look back, and choosing love, it shows that the past may be a painful chapter, but it is not the whole book of your life. Today's story isn't just about a woman escaping the darkness. It's a reminder that healing begins when you dare to believe you deserve something better. And sometimes love doesn't arrive as a miracle, but as someone patient enough to stay, even when you cannot yet believe in yourself. Thank you for taking the time to hear this journey. If this story touched you, please leave a comment below. Share it if you know someone who needs to be reminded they are not alone. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to continue joining us for moving tales of courage, hope, and love. Because who knows, the next story might be your own.